are going live. Hello. Welcome everyone to our podcast with Value Ships. My name is Chris and I'm co-founder of Value Ships. We are a boutique pricing consultancy. And today we have Vova with us. A good friend. We used to, maybe not we used to, we had a couple of very interesting pricing conversations. First at Vova's actually podcast, then we've met in Amsterdam, but maybe without the further ado, Vova, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for having me, first of all. My name is Vova Feldman. I'm founder and CEO at Freemius. Freemius is a payment, subscription, and tax management basically platform. We provide the entire commercial stack for selling software. And yeah, I met Chris we started with a webinar that we hosted and then in several events. And here we are. So
a very relevant topic, especially nowadays, right? I think the things that Freemius are working on. So everyone who has joined our webinar, please let us know that you're here. Hello to everyone. Tell us where are you coming from. I guess we'll have people all over the world. And before we jump into the topic of today's webinar, which is of course pricing, we used to have, or not we used to have, but we do have a very nice, I would say the tradition already, because it has been like 5, maybe 8, maybe even already 10 times, a bit of a tradition of asking the same questions. So before we jump into specifics, right, of your pricing journey, let's start with a bit of a warm-up. So how do you see the tech ecosystem evolving, not in next 1 year, not in the next 2 years, but in next 10 years? Any bold predictions, anything that you foresee in next 10 years?
Yeah, I think I can't be bolder than, the Elons and all those others of predicting that no one is going to work anymore and work will be like a hobby thingy. So I don't know if that will be the direction, but definitely I think the transition that we're seeing happening right now is more into less execution and more about, the strategy, the thinking, the critical thinking. And I think this will inevitably push the ecosystem and the educational system that has to kind of keep up with all those crazy changes that are happening to that direction, right? Of strategizing and thinking less about, okay, how do I actually execute that? Because the execution, AI, robots, and all those other cool things that are happening right now. But yeah, I think that's the evolvement. I think we'll see way more companies that are significantly smaller in terms of their size and headcount and the impact they can make. We're already seeing those AI companies that have like 20, 30 employees are getting to $100 million ARR. So the workforce kind of is changing significantly. AI is getting smarter, better, more efficient. Agents. I mean, it's hard to say in 10 years, right? It's hard to say what's going to happen in the next 6 months with all the crazy stuff that are going on.
But isn't it easier? Don't you think that, sometimes I do have a feeling that it's much easier to, foresee what happens in 10 years versus what will happen in like 5 days, right? So, I mean, there is sometimes this notion, but, what I'm getting from you is that, first of all, education needs to keep up with the changes, number one, and also you foresee a bit of an acceleration, right? So, I mean, things will be moving even faster than today. And you, my friend, you are moving quite fast with your pricing journey. So maybe we can dive into it. And friends in the audience, if you do have any predictions for the next 10 years, please let us also know in the comments. And let's now focus on your journey. So can you walk us through the pricing journey of Freemius? So where did you start? What were the changes, and where are you currently? I know it's a big question because it's been quite of an involvement. We did have a conversation about this, but maybe you can briefly walk us through the changes, and then we can jump into why, and then at the end about the impact, right? So I think This is how we're going to structure our conversation today.
Sure. So I think we had like four key moments through through the company history that related to pricing. The first one is deciding on the initial pricing, and looking back, that was completely off. Why? Because the solution that we come up with was uh, very, I would say, innovative. There were no other comps around us, like a company that's say doing something similar. And the closest things that we kind of felt that this is what we do in some ways was actually marketplaces. So
Mm-hmm.
we kind of looked on the pricing of marketplaces. We are in the payment space, so the whole concept of like revenue share or fee base, that it's tied to the volumes that you process, that was kind of obvious because that's how all payment solutions been doing that. But what would be that percentage, or whether should we charge some sort of initial setup fee or something like that? Like we went with the direction, we don't want to charge anything ahead of time. So we want to be tied directly to the value, which is the money that you make through the platform. Uh, but we went with a number that, looking back, it didn't make sense. So that
Mm-hmm.
was the initial, and this is how we didn't launch the product back then, but that was like the offering when we try to get customers on the platform. This is what we communicated to them, and people don't necessarily. I think that was actually a mistake potentially, that I didn't spend enough time getting feedback about the pricing. Right? It was just
Exactly.
like the
That was my
overall
my, my, my
reaction. Yeah.
my point, right? So let's pause here for the
Mhm.
moment, because this is very interesting for me to, and I think for everyone actually, to understand how you, because then every next pricing is a pricing involvement, right? But you were at that key moment, you were at the new product pricing, so to say. So from what you said, you took into consideration competition, and actually went a bit of ahead of my question, because the next question, with regards to the first pricing, I wanted to ask you is, how much time did you spend on it, right? So how much effort did you dedicate to coming up with this commercial model? How important it was?
Yeah. I think it was, I was mindful that getting the right price is important. Um, but again, the point of reference was wrong. And I didn't spend, enough time focusing.
Mhm.
Back then, I didn't spend enough time focusing on the pricing.
So I'm
So
stealing
that.
this one from you, actually,
Mhm.
because I'm always saying, the risk of competitive-based pricing is that you won't be executing as much value as you supposed to execute, right? But
Mhm.
also, the point that we are raising is that, your point of reference could be wrong, right? Either you're comparing yourself to next best alternative, or to your clients instead of your competitors, or just irrelevant, right? So you didn't know, like, at the very beginning, if you don't have a product market fit, I mean, it's hard to identify the competition, right?
Well, we didn't have customers at all, back then. So you don't get any signals yet, whether it's the number right or wrong and all of that. But later on, I actually, did a similar session, talked with someone, and he surfaced like proactively the pricing thing. And he was someone that I respect, knowing in the industry, knows his shit, and all of that. So it kind of clicked to me, okay, it doesn't make sense, and I'm really glad that he was blunt about that and didn't shy away from giving me that feedback. Um, and that was the point that I realized, okay, like this is like we have to make a major shift in the pricing. And that was the second part. And that's when we introduced pricing that made more sense. It was more relevant to the value that we actually offer. And we ran with that for a certain period. And we started to get not necessarily feedback about the pricing, but we started to onboard customers, and it felt that it makes sense because people agreed to pay that. Uh, and then on a later stage, due to some shifts in the market, so we are a merchant of record, which means that we are using other payment processors underneath. We started to notice that Visa, MasterCard, or all those payment processors and the payment service providers like Stripe and PayPal, their pricing started to change like pretty frequently. So, and it started to grow. So we realized that if, as long as our pricing is including that, like it's not separate, we are losing margins because of Visa, like third party, players that we have no control of, and it constantly changing, and it's against us. So
Mm-hmm.
the second transition was, okay, we need to separate ourselves from those payment processing costs, and basically structure our pricing as, this is our margin, plus there is the additional cost that we're like passing over to you.
And this is, I think, also, sorry for interrupting here a bit, but Vova, I think that this is like super, super crucial for everyone who is right now in SaaS, right? That, you need to factor in the costs, basically. The thing that we haven't been doing in SaaS too much, right? With margins that we're having. And right now, tying it, let's tie this back to AI. AI will generate costs, and our costs will differ month to month, day to day, right? So, I mean, what you made, from what I understand, is that you decided to separate yourself from the costs, which brought you agility, right? Or at least minimum margin, right? So frequently in traditional industries, like very traditional industries, retail, CPG, chemicals, I mean, you have this minimum price, the recommended, so to say, price, which is like at the point of your break even. And I think this is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the logic that was behind the change, right? And what was the spark for this logic was, the market transition, big market change driven by the biggest companies on the market, right?
Yep, for sure. And it also, in addition to kind of reducing that dependency, it also, now we can show smaller numbers, right? Because we put that aside and we just say, excluding gateway fees, and it also shows in terms of transparency what is like our actual margin, and we can also reveal smaller numbers, and that's more appealing from a marketing perspective. So it was like, double advantage, I would say, securing our business against fluctuation in the payments industry, and also communicating more compelling pricing.
Okay, so that was like the iteration, like it was like the first pricing, then it was the second iteration driven by the market forces and costs. That was like the logic behind this, but also, I mean, the end product of it, the impact of it was like, correct me if I'm wrong, but higher conversion due to the lower numbers that you are showcasing at the conversion.
Absolutely. And also, as part of that, I didn't mention it, but because years ago the platform was not there, the documentation wasn't there, like every software maker or customer that we onboarded, there was much higher support load and onboarding and walkthroughs on the initial phases. And when a company is not charging anything ahead of time, there's a risk, right? Because you can spend all these resources, maybe the person won't do anything, maybe also you onboard them and they're not able to sell anything, right? So essentially you invest a lot of resources and you didn't get anything back from that. So we had like brackets when on the initial, revenue, the revenue share is slightly higher, then it goes a little lower, and once you cross a certain amount, it goes to the final pricing, basically. And that worked well. Some didn't like that, some like that, like those who don't make any money at all. For them, it's sure, I'm not making any money anyway. For others who maybe already making, it was, wait, I'm joining the platform, I'm already making, what do I need to like be maybe a little like penalized in the beginning? So that was part of the those previous iterations. And the latest iteration was basically actually all the iterations were reducing the prices. We started with the highest unintentionally, it just happened, and every time we like reduced prices over the years. So the
Which
last
is rare,
iteration,
right? By the way, right? When you think
yeah.
about this, just a comment here, right? I mean, in general, in 80% of the cases that we are seeing, especially if the markets are not very commoditized and, they are maybe not blue ocean, but also neither a red ocean. Typically, you grow your solution, which means that you're adding more features, which means that you're adding more value, which means that you're increasing the prices. What you were doing was you were getting better as a solution, but also at the same time, you are decreasing the prices, right? So just to sum it up, which is a rare strategy, but yeah, we'll hear soon enough how it played out. So the latest iteration, coming back to your point.
Yeah, so I think every time we made those changes, it was all based on collecting feedback and signals, from our customers, from potential buyers, and so on. So it's this balance of the lower you get, potentially you can capture more audience because the more attractive you become. I think in our space, the last iteration, we did a bunch of things. It was a major pricing shift and also a major shift in the design of our solution. And I'll explain. First, we got rid of those initial tiers because over the years, we improved the systems, the onboarding, the developer experience, everything became easier, and getting new makers into the platform, yes, it's a little higher support load, but it's not something that we feel that, justifies that extra. I think we're losing more potential makers, potential customers to join than actually benefiting from that extra diff in revenue. So this is one thing. The second thing, and this is really exciting, we introduced growth pricing. So part of what we're trying to communicate, and we truly believe in that, is because it's a revenue share model, our success is directly tied to the success of the software makers that we work with. So there is this mutual, work towards success. We have the same interests. Everyone wants us and the makers. We want them to be successful, and we're trying to put as many resources as we can to help them succeed. But when it comes to the pricing,
just to make sure that we are all on the same page. So just to translate it to the very, very simple language, every time that when your customers is doing the sell, you are taking the commission out of it, right? So if I'm selling a phone for 1K, you will take the percentage out of this price tag, right?
Right, exactly. So it's percentage based, basically, margin that we take.
Success, commission, success, yes. Take rate. There are many different names for this thing, but
I think I like to call it revenue share or fee. Commission feels to me like a one-time thingy rather than ongoing partnership and collaboration. So terminology matters,
yeah, words matter. Take rate,
words matter for sure.
Also, so revenue share, right? So this is the term that we'll be using moving further.
Yes, so we realize that while we're aligned on everything, when it comes to pricing, there is friction, because the bigger you get, the more money you process. It also means the absolute number of that percentage is getting bigger, and at a certain point it stops from making sense, and you're starting to ask yourself, should I build it or should I continue using it? Should I hire custom team to deal with this stuff, etc. But usually what happens in the payments industry is that you will contact your payment solution and say, hey guys, we're making a lot of money, it doesn't make sense to keep paying that percentage. I want better rates, let's negotiate, right? And you get into this tedious negotiation process. It's annoying for you as a company because it distracts your resources from your customers, from your product, from everything. But it's something that you need to do because there's an opportunity. But also it's pretty challenging to move from one payment solution to another. At least psychologically, it's challenging because the business is already running, right? So you don't want to touch something that it's working for you. So it's you don't know what will be the outcome. It takes time, frustrates, and all of that. And there is this friction. There is no alignment of interest because the company want to maximize their cut while you want to minimize that. So we decided to eliminate that completely and introduce transparent growth pricing, which means it doesn't matter how much you're making. We have this table that you can look and you can see exactly, calculate exactly how much you will pay. You can do that at any point in time. So even if you're starting out and you're thinking, oh, I want to build this, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars company, you can from day one calculate how much you'll pay when you'll get there. And this eliminates friction because you are deciding, right? It's automatic. You don't need to negotiate with us. It's automatically applied. And you can just choose at any point, when you're opting into Freemius, is this for me or not? If it's not for you, okay, you can choose another solution, but it's transparent and you can know about that in advance. But once you get into that and you agree to it, okay, I know my trajectory. I know I'm cool with that direction, and I never need to deal with that anymore. And it also makes sense because once you get to those high volumes, we really take friction. So the increase in price is exponentially lower when you make high volumes, which should be this way and make sense.
So let me make sure that we grasp all the changes that has happened. So the first change
I didn't finish with the last change, but yeah, there's another
okay.
change.
Okay.
But let's grasp both.
Yeah. Let's summarize those, right? Just to make sure that that we are not missing something. So the first big change, which is like what you basically said in between the lines, is that your pricing is transparent. So right,
Yes.
so it was not transparent. Right now is fully transparent. Everyone can get a quote from your website. Number one. Number two, there is a calculator, right? So I mean, it might be, comes hand in hand with transparent pricing, but not all transparent pricing have a calculator in order to understand. Which is, by the way, especially at this time of the year, if you're utilizing input-based budgeting, basically it's a very handy feature, right? So I mean, you can forecast or plan for your revenue in 2026, and then you can basically know what will be revenue share between you and your different partners, right? Like Freemius. Number two. Number three, it's not a hybrid model anymore, right? So I mean, it's a solely commission-based.
It was commission-based as well. It was just
but
like
not solely.
No, it was solely commission, like
okay.
revenue share base. It's just that the percentage on the initial revenue was slightly higher than lower, etc., just to get the return on that initial investment. So we removed that to start from from the end, not exactly the end, because there's the growth pricing. And I just want to say that, like, you can also argue that we did have always transparent pricing. Like, we had the number on the page, but it's just when you get to high volumes, it's like common knowledge that you can negotiate and get better rates. So it was still transparent, but we kind of introduced the transparency of like skipping the whole negotiation needs.
So funny as it gets, but you mentioned marketplace at the very beginning of our discussion, and marketplaces are the masters of simplifying the customer buying journey, right? So what you did actually is also like you simplified the buying journey, especially for the clients who are on the higher end when it comes to the revenue.
Right.
So those are the changes that so far I understand. That you said that there is one more, or like
yes.
there are some more.
Yeah, there's one more fundamental. So we've been focused on the WordPress ecosystem for many years, and we built a solution that is very like vertical focused, very deep, like gives a lot of capabilities specifically for that ecosystem that do require resources, from our end, various resources. And 2 years ago, we started an expansion to the greater software ecosystem with a focus on SaaS. And many of those capabilities are simply not needed, but our system simply was not ready to, okay, you get only sub part of the capabilities versus you get the entire solution. So we had to slightly like redesign the way, the experience in the product, the way features are being, available to our customers, and basically offer two options. You can get like more, you can get the full vertical WordPress solution, and you can get something that removes all those WordPress specific extra capabilities. And for that, we offer a different price, which is 4.7%. So the WordPress solution became like an add-on on top of the base price. Well, previously we only had the full solution. So it was like 7% for everything. And now we separate that for 4.7 for the base. So if you want to sell SaaS or apps or anything that it's not WordPress, 4.7. If you want the full WordPress solution, you add 2.3%, which brings it to 7, which was the previous price. But in addition to becoming more competitive in that new expansion that we did, SaaS and apps and all of that, it also allowed WordPress product makers who are more price sensitive and don't care about solving those WordPress deep integration themselves, duct taping, third-party solutions, so they can still use our like lower tier, right, and duct tape the other things. Because we know that over the years, some also in WordPress, some makers went with our competition who don't have the deeper integration with WordPress because they were more price sensitive. And this is something that we're seeing in some countries, usually, that in lower social economic kind of situation, less Western countries, I would say, that they not value their time as much, or maybe the cost of their time is just significantly lower as well. So it gave also WordPress makers more options, made us more competitive in the new market that we expanded to, in addition to the growth pricing and the other things that I mentioned.
And so basically, when I'm thinking about this, it seems that you've decided that there is an opportunity in the market that you are currently overserving, right? So, I mean, frequently when you think about this, I mean, you are doing the job, very good job, but for some that was not needed, but the price was following this job. So you decided, okay, so there is a bit of a market with overserved. Maybe they don't need this solution, so I'll trim this solution a bit, I will downsize it, and then like came up with a lower price, which also I mean, it's a lot, right? 3.3%. It lowers the barrier of entry. So this is like, pricing wise, the change that has happened. So, and typically differentiation is also what we observe, from, thinking in terms of all-in-one pricing. I mean, you were scaling your pricing by the core value metric, which is most likely revenue. And right now you are scaling your product not only by the core value metric, which is a revenue share by the revenue that you are doing, but also by the features, right? So, and feature in this particular example was a WordPress thing that you've described.
Yeah, I think what drove that separation was indeed the expansion to the new market, because they simply don't need those features in that ecosystem. So it doesn't make sense to charge them a premium, especially when our competitors don't have those features and their price is lower. So like we're charging for premium for features that this audience don't need at all. They don't use it. It's just not part of their flow. So
it's a use case that is hard to defend, right? It's like, yeah, but we have this feature, but we don't want this feature. Yeah, but we have it, right? So who cares, right? So hard to makes a lot of sense. So is there anything else? So those are like 3-4 big fundamental shifts from being like almost fully transparent to fully transparent, differentiating your model, hence also serving the market, changing percentages a bit. So those are the fundamental things. Is there anything else before we move on to key learnings and challenges over the way?
Yeah, maybe it's a bit key learning, but it was like something that happened by introducing the growth pricing. It basically made us a very like competitive. So first of all, we're the only one that have this growth pricing in the payments industry. Like there's no one else that's doing that. So that's unique. And every time, when we talk with makers, that sounds very, very appealing to them. And second, when you process high volumes, it turned us to a very, very affordable price. Like actually, the more you make, the more affordable we become, because once you pay more than 100, once you process more than 100K per month, on whatever you make above that 100K, we only take 0.5%. And there's no one else in the market that, offering these prices. And for us, it makes sense because of, the structure of the company, our target audience, etc. So it made us very, very compelling to companies that are processing high volumes.
Which makes a lot of which makes a lot of sense, and also as a key learning, I think in general, maybe you can also tell us a bit about the results in a minute. I know it's a fresh thing, but in general, as a rule of thumb, general business rule, I would say, like, volume discounting is the a market standard, right? So not every company lives in this world, and if you do not, and here to the broader audience, if you do not have any volume discounts, so the more people buy, they pay less per one unit. Basically, this is how the volume discount works. Typically, it's worth introducing it. So you incentivize your people for expansion revenue. In your case, also, the absolute number that they will be paying will be not that high. So, Vova, it's been quite of a journey for you. So I typically see, three types of challenges, right? So the first one is like technical challenges, but maybe we can put it on the side for the time being. But just to be fair, you also need to implement those things not only commercially but technically. So this is like one first big bucket of challenges. The second one is communication challenges. So how do you communicate? How do you communicate to new users? How do you communicate to currently existing users? Number one. And then number two, financial challenges or opportunities, let's call it that way. So, how it played out, how do you measure the success? Do you measure the success? So I would like to, in particular, I would like to jump into your key learnings, effects, challenges of those two things, so financial and communication. So maybe before we go into the financial, maybe we can touch base on the communication. So how do you communicate those changes? How do you do it? How do you prepare for it?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was and it is a challenge when it comes to communication, especially because this is like, it involves multiple changes here, and it impacts differently on different personas and the whole execution thing. And so how did we communicate that? Through newsletters, through explainer videos. I'm going and talking about our new pricing in different channels. Right now what we're doing in some way, right? Trying to educate and explain what we've done, why we did it, the logic. It's not obvious because people, they don't necessarily have the time or will to dive into all these details. And I can tell you also there is this fine balance between marketing and communications, right? On one hand, like I said, we introduce a lower tier, but it's not relevant to a lot of our audience because they do use the whole WordPress solution. So how do you communicate that without confusing them, right? Showing them a lower number, yet wait, they can't really, because they are using those other features. So there are definitely some challenges, and we try to, like, it was a whole company project. It involved everyone, including, like you said, the technical side, to actually implement those changes. And those were fundamental changes in the way we calculate the numbers. But we did our best. We still got some pushbacks from people that were confused, contacted support, didn't understand. There was also the challenge of whether you bring the pricing to your already existing customers or you only apply it on new accounts. So we experimented with not all those changes, but with some of the changes for a certain period without like officially marketing it and focusing only on new, accounts. And we got some pushbacks. Some people that came, hey, I've been using you for a while. Now I'm still, maybe they didn't process, like not making a lot of money. So they didn't cross those brackets. And now suddenly new customers who are joining, and they're starting with a like lower rate right away, so it's like doesn't make sense for them. So there were some challenges. We solved things, some of them like case by case. But when we decided to like launch it to everyone, we applied it on all the accounts, also on the ones that were not there yet in the rates, and we like lost money on that. But we also ran the math and kind of tried to understand how much money we're potentially losing here, to understand it's something that we were okay to deal with. So it was logical decision. We thought about that, calculated the numbers. So yeah, I think, I don't know, I hope it kind of answers the question.
Yes, 100%. But I wanted to,
Challenge me.
go a little. No, challenge maybe no. I had one challenge. It's like newsletter at the end. What's the open rate of newsletter and how many people really deep dive into it? And like YouTube,
Yeah, social media and video.
that might be amazing
Yeah.
for some of the audience, but I could imagine that you also have a big clients, right? And those clients, I mean, you can't really afford that they will be surprised, right? Or you can't really afford miscommunication. I'm not talking that smaller clients are not relevant. They are very relevant, and you need to make sure that they know and stuff like this. But also when we are doing price changes, I mean, we are doing something that is called a concentration curve, right? So we try to understand what percentage of your clients is responsible for what percentage of your revenue. And of course, when you have like this 1,000 clients that are responsible in total for 2% of your revenue, the means of communication of price change is a bit different versus this one client who is solely responsible for 5% of your revenue. So I wanted to ask you if you had any, I would say, special treatment to the the bigger clients, enterprise level clients.
Yeah.
Is there anything else beyond very good newsletter, social media explaining very good means, but maybe is there something extra to this top 10 clients?
So I would say, first of all, no one got negatively impacted by the new pricing. On the contrary, most of our customers, their rates were reduced in one way or another, and those who were, like you said, all the very high volumes who have custom rates, if the custom rates were better, we are keeping that. We didn't apply the new pricing on that. So some of them indeed reach out to us, and we kind of clarify the situation. But we also clarify that, as the custom contract ends, that will kick in, right? Because it's also something that it's dynamically adjusted based on your monthly revenue versus setting up a contract for 2-3 years. That, yes, the contract says that you need to keep a certain level of volumes, but you don't want, it's like a bad practice to contact, hey guys, you missed a few months, right? Your goal, let's adjust your rates, increase your price. So it's not really working this way. So I feel that this is like, we found something that is fair. It was also aligned with the way we ran those, custom rates for some of the makers. And like I said, no one got negatively impacted by the change. On the contrary, for most, the price was reduced in one way or another. So,
and any speaking about this, and then we'll move to the financials, or like early signs, how you could identify if the change was positive or negative at the end. You need to have an ROI behind this, but anything that was like surprising to you. I'm happy to jump in with one example that sometimes we are getting. So of course, I mean, you have subsegments of customers when changing the price. You have like wise people who ask you 10,000 questions. questions. You have, we call them savages, right? You have hooligans, right? So this 5% of the people who will be screaming very loud that, this price change, no matter if it's like good or bad for them, they are becoming corporate, and most likely you have some negative, agenda. I mean, it's always like that. It's normal. Typically, there will be some clients like this, right? But there are also like, and what frequently it's a positive surprise for me is like, people who are appreciating, right? Supporters. Again, this is not typically the biggest group, but people who are saying, yeah, I mean, it was due. You should have introduced it for a couple for a couple of months. I support you, right? Or good move, stuff like that. So anything that was surprising with the customer feedback, either for the first or like the current change that you are making.
Yeah, I don't feel there were like too much surprises. Why? Because we talked about those changes with a lot of customers or potential customers ahead of time. So we already try to, get that feedback ahead of time to see that when we launch it officially, it won't, we won't get those pushbacks. And it also helped us, we came like, this is what we want to do. Like, what do you think about that? Or if you were, because our audience are also technical founders. So those are opinionated people who running businesses. Some of them, we have personal, like great relationships. So like on the friendship level. So we went to those, and asked for genuine feedback. Like, what do you think about that? And so I think we managed to surface all the bugs and potential weaknesses or things that we need to highlight more than others ahead of time, which was really good. But there were, some of those, and I think overall the feedback that we're getting is really, really positive. In the end, people do like transparency. So most, like I said, those like high volumes customer rates, we if the rates were better, we didn't touch them. But for everyone else who is aspiring to get to those high volumes, now they know that they're going to pay less. So it's like, I'm using something and paying for it, and I know that I'm going to pay less in the future. It's like great, and it's transparent. So the feedback overall is very, very positive. The most of the negativity came from that period before we officially kind of launched it, but we started to show signals more publicly about the change, and then some like more legacy, not legacy, people who where before the experimentation of the new pricing, they started to notice that, and they're not happy that, they joined maybe a month before or a few months before. They're like losing out a bit because we just introduced that. So they're not happy about that, but we solve those kind of case by case.
Understood. So this is also, I think, a good sign that you dedicated, and this is what I'm also getting in between the lines, right? That you are pre-prepared, which is always a good thing. Number one, and also you had some time in order to solve case by case use cases, right? So I mean, you had capacity to do that, and frequently I see that one of the big mistakes is that you are introducing it, and we're not foreseeing that at CSM you will need, for example, more capacity. If you are introducing a price change, make sure that you have like 10% extra capacity, 20% if the price change is big, extra capacity in your like customer support, for example, right? Just to make sure that they can answer all the questions. FAQ doesn't hurt. Very small things can save you a lot of time and bring you a lot of additional profit.
Yeah, so, and I do want to say that, just a second, in comparison to the first, price point, when we didn't spend much time thinking about that, this was a strategic thing for us that we defined in our like OKRs is a meaningful thing that we need to work on. And it was a long journey to get the right pricing that involved, many team members from the senior leadership, as well as many other founders that we involved outside that were either our, direct customers or potential customers or founder friends. So we got a lot of perspectives on the pricing and molded the exact like structure and how to put it together. So I would say the entire change to get to it, it took like 6 months until we felt, okay, this is it. So it was a
So
long journey.
it's also, hearing that you made my day by saying like we had pricing in our OKRs, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
nice, right? That's a
Yeah.
good thing to have. Okay, so we can open up for the questions right now. For anyone in the audience, if you have any questions to Vova, this is actually a very good time to ask them. And before, of course, we please put them in the chat. And in the meantime, what I want to ask you is about, at the end, the goal, right? So you've been preparing for that. You had it in the OKR, so I'll take the advantage of that. So what were the keyword results that you were looking after, right? What is the KPI that was like, a North Star metric in this particular place? And then, 6 months from today, you can say it was successful, it wasn't successful. So what was that?
I think it was, so I wouldn't say that we have a North Star OKR for the repricing. We defined the North Star OKR in the market expansion and the number of, SaaS products that we want on board within that period that we defined to ourselves, and what would be the volume that they're processing through the platform. So I can share. So we are seeing, if we take, if we go, I'm just working on a year in review right now. So I'm looking on the numbers and everything. And we do track the North Star OKR on a weekly basis anyway. But overall, if we go like, to the beginning of the year, the adoption of new SaaS products that are starting to sell on a weekly basis on Freemius, that growth has expedited by 3x. Right? The pricing is something that we just launched in October, but we felt that this is like a critical thing for us, again, because of the competitive landscape. Like I said, we've been offering a price that I wouldn't say it wasn't the most expensive, but more on the higher tier. And why? Because a big part of that was features that market don't need. So it was like a critical step that we had to do, and we added a lot of bonuses in it. But in the end, the North Star is the same, is to getting to the, like I said, the number of SaaS makers on the platform selling certain volumes. And it's all part of that big move of a lot of changes that are happening in the company, including the pricing. I don't know if it's because of the pricing directly or just because we're getting more and more attention, awareness, positioning, and all of that, but we're definitely seeing faster adoption these days and less questions about concerns about the price. So this is an indicator, right? If previously we're getting like more pushbacks about the price as part of that, pre-sale cycle, now we don't do that. Like we have significantly less about that. We also created a lot of comparison pages with most of our like direct competitors, where we surface the actual math, because the math can be very misleading in some cases, to educate the market. That was also part of the communications, right? Because we have that component. There's also Stripe as a competitor, which they're like completely different beast, and they show very different numbers, and people lack of awareness of how they actually price. So there's a lot of education that we started to put when it comes to our pricing, as well as how it looks compared to our competitors. So that's another educational component that we're like heavily pushing right now. So I can like give you, in terms of the North Star OKR, we are aiming to get to a certain number by Q1. We are right now around 60%, and it started to grow faster, than before. I believe, based on the time that we have left, that I really hope, that we're gonna get there. And I think the pricing is a critical, like, must-have component that will help us to achieve that goal.
So I'll not push here, but I don't fully believe you.
You don't believe me in what?
That there is like, this one number, right? So conversion increase or stuff like that, right? So no, I'm kidding, of course. It's not like I don't believe you, but also typically,
no, this is what I said. That's truly our North Star, like number of SaaS products processing a certain GMV through those products, and there's also a retention component, staying with us for 12 months at least. So that kind of summarized the North Star, the three key results, which is number of products, volumes,
GMV
and retention. Yeah.
GMV, just for everyone to be on the same page, gross merchandise value, right? So how many actually
volume, gross merchant volume.
Volume,
Yeah.
right? So this is how much money actually you process, like at the end.
Exactly.
In the software. So thinking about this, so you were pretty prepared for that. I mean, you do have KPIs. Thinking in terms like looking ahead, right? Do you have any? And I want to go into the operations a bit here, right? So do you have any monthly updates on pricing? Do you have any person that is responsible? And I'm not saying in terms of full-time employee, right? I'm just saying where does it sit? Maybe let's put it that way. Where does it sit?
It sits with me. We are 20 team members. I'm the founder and CEO, and it sits with me. And yeah, I don't think other team members, they were involved in the process, but I think it's very unlikely that one of them will trigger something like that. I mean, that the fact that we're priced for a specific vertical and not competitive on the SaaS kind of side, that was obvious. The team knows the competitive landscape, so it was an expected move that we need to do something. We are also considering to run some promotions next year, maybe to waive fees for a certain period for makers who migrate from competing solutions, experiment with different promotions, see how it goes. But this is mostly driven from my end.
So it sits there, and this is also my experience, right? That up to about 40-50 people, typically it sits with CEO or with the board of the company. Then later on, it's sometimes it stays with, and then it depends with finance, with CRO, with sales also. So this is what I see. The last question from my side, reflecting on your journey, you moved from fully competitive to fully, maybe not to fully, but to more client oriented, more solution oriented. But I would say that it's most likely, and this is a hypothesis, it's much more of an evolution, which means that it doesn't go from A to Z, but it goes from A to Z, but it has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? So I mean, you take all the learnings that you had in the past. So you definitely took, and you've mentioned that in your last sentence, in competition into consideration. How important that was, right? How in the pricing decision and the ultimate shape of your pricing, what was the role of competition while establishing this?
There was a role in the competition. We cannot ignore it. And I think, like I said, when we started, initially there was not a lot of solutions. Plus, we focus on this use case or ecosystem, WordPress, and there was no other solution. There is still no other solution that's specifically focused on WordPress that does what we do. But when we look on SaaS, there are solutions, right? And there are established players that have been there for years and already kind of set the feeling of how much that solution should be priced. So whether we offer more or less, we're already categorized by potential customers as a solution in that category. So there is a certain expectation in terms of what should be the benchmark of the pricing. So it did play a role. But also, I would say what played more meaningful part is the communications that we've done, with the existing makers, with potential customers in different sizes, bigger ones, smaller ones, and kind of collecting all the concerns that we can and trying to come up with pricing that check all the boxes. And I think we managed to do that.
So I would say that it's like, the competition, like the journey, can be from one hand side summarized from like competition as an input to competition as a boundaries, right? So it gives you like a bit of a boundaries what companies could like, or what you could play with, but it was definitely not the definite input, right? So it's like from competition to customer oriented, and I believe that the early signs are positive. So fingers crossed, and I'm very impressed with what you've did, and I love to see pricing as a process, and you clearly rock when it comes to that. There is a question from Bjorn. Yes, this session will be recorded, is recorded actually, and we'll put it on YouTube. So we'll send it also to everyone who was invited for this or signed up for this webinar. Vova, from my side, I thank you a lot. So I mean, it's a very nice and inspiring journey, and I love to see that pricing, you can treat pricing as a strategic input actually for your company. Any closing remarks before we close this our webinar?
I think maybe something I wanted to mention with the previous question is that like we the challenge was to find a way how we check all the boxes of the concern and feedback that we collected, plus that it will make sense for us as a business based on our goals, our financial direction and all of that. And this is like the balance, because in theory we can just like drop prices to something ridiculous and then of course we reduced all the concerns, it's just super cheap and all of that, but it still needs to make sense with your business and all of that. So that was the challenge. Final thoughts. I mean, I'm constantly sharing my kind of founder journey of building a multi-million-dollar SaaS. So feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, wherever you are. And if you are struggling with payments and want to find someone that is growing with you hand to hand and doing in transparent and fair way, feel free to reach out. Freemius.
So we'll hyperlink your LinkedIn on our YouTube for sure, and make sure to follow Vova. A very nice journey, a lot of iterations, but I think good iterations, and again, love to see. I'm a big fan of observing your pricing journey. On your last point, I think and that might be a good closing remark. Also, like the last punchline, it's like, it depends what is your leading and lagging metric. And, if your leading metric is putting your pricing based on the feedback from the customer, their willingness to pay, then your lagging metric, which is like a company success, will follow, right? So of course, I mean, I'm simplifying this a bit. I mean, you always need to have those two perspectives in your mind: impact modeling, revenue understanding, KPIs that will help you actually make the good decision, are of course vital for successful pricing transformation. But I think we've covered all of them during this 1 hour. Vova, again, thank you very much. And to all of you, this was the last webinar of this year, but we don't stop. We'll have them. We'll have even more of them next year. Maybe after Vova, next time with you after the next price change. Let's see what the future brings.
I hope it won't happen soon.
So we'll talk about the 1 year.
The results. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.